In this walkthrough, I'm going to do static wall exercise. For static wall, you're going to need a wall shock, and you probably are going to need a cushion or two. I have got a pretty chunky big cushion here, so this is my favorite one to go underneath my head and my shoulders. So what we are going to do is we are not going to be competitive with ourselves and put our bottom all the way to the wall, okay? Eventually, in future times, you might be able to do that. But the closer that you go to the wall, the more likely you are to compensate because you are asking for more function of your hips. And for most people, we don't have very much function in our hips, and we also don't have very much function in our feet, which is the other thing that we're going after here. So eventually we want this 90 degrees position at the hip, but today is not the day. You can keep chipping away at that in your own time. What we are going to do instead is we are going to draw ourselves as far away from the wall as we need, and you might be way further back from the wall than me, until we feel like the whole of our pelvis is kind of relaxed and flat to the floor. So by that, what I mean is you're going to have the top of your pelvis, which is your sacrum, feeding into your lower back, and you have your tailbone, your coccyx, which is kind of close to your butthole. And what we don't want is for the kind of butthole to be lifted up and the lower back to be really smushed into the floor. But we also don't want it to be that the sacrum is lifted up and that the lower back is rounded, sorry. So we want the pelvis flat, but we want the pelvis relaxed. And same goes with your lower back, with your rib cage, and with your shoulders. So let's talk about cushioning next. If I didn't have my cushion, the bottom of my rib cage here, as my head comes to the floor, would lift up, and the rib cage would be higher than my hips. This is my rib cage flaring, and this means that I'm not going to get any of the upper body rearrangement benefits of whether if my rib cage was down. And so I don't want us using our abdominals here to pull the rib cage down, because if we do that, we're more likely to tilt our neck backwards into hyperextension or just be really rounded through our shoulders. So I've got my cushion. You can also use your kind of cork posture rolls or a yoga block if you want to, but I like a cushion. We can wedge it underneath our shoulder blades so that we're focusing on that rib cage angling downwards. The bottom of the rib cage is not higher than the hips if you look down at yourself like this, but there's no tension, so I'm not squeezing my abdominals to put myself here. My arms are going to go out to the sides at 45 degrees. The palms are facing up. You can put your hands behind your head and just allow those elbows to relax out to the side, but we don't want the rib cage lifting. So the rib cage is your focus in this exercise. I think I'm going to put my arms out to the side today. So I'm really just using that cushion to keep me in this wedged position where my bottom of my rib cage is in alignment with my hips. The pelvis stays grounded. We're going to start off today by bending our knees loads and pulling the tops of our feet back towards us. Before we think about our knees, we're going to think about our feet. So we've got our toes, our ankles, our knees, and our hips in alignment. For lots of you, your knees are going to be wildly out of alignment. Focus on the toes, the ankles, and the hips. Don't try and rearrange your knees, okay? So the toes and the ankles and the hips are what you want to focus on more, even if your knees are really twisting inwards or things like that. So just don't worry about your knees if they look very different to what your feet and your hips are doing. We're going to pull backwards through the tops of our feet, keeping that bend in our knees for now. As we pull backwards through the tops of our feet, we're making sure that we're pulling backwards through the tops of our feet and that we're not just pulling backwards through our toes. So some of you here are going to have your feet pointed away from you and your toes pulling back. What we are trying to do is close at the angle at the front of the ankle so that we really get our shins burning. We're looking for shin burn here. That's like the number one sensation that we want to lock into. As the feet pull back, we're trying to relax our toes. So we don't want the toes pulling backwards too. We want the toes relaxed in alignment with the kind of bottom of the foot. The feet pull backwards. We want the shins to burn. We're also making sure that we don't spin our feet off out to the side. So the middle of the second and the third toes stays in alignment with the hips. And we're also making sure that we're not scooping our big toes towards us. If our big toes are closer towards us than our fifth toes, we are supinating our feet, we're cheating, we're not dorsiflexing. This is not what we want. We want to pull the outside edges of the feet back towards us as much as we do the inside edges of the feet. And it's like we could have a tray of champagne on the bottoms of our feet because there is no rotation through the ankle and through the midfoot. So it's like this. This is dorsiflexion. This is really going to burn the front of your shins and the reason, and maybe the sides of your shins as well, the sides of your calves. As you pull the outside edges of your feet downwards, you'll probably notice the sides of your calves switch on. And the reason that your body is trying to do that is because it's trying to avoid what we want. We want dorsiflexion. We don't want supination. So for lots of you, this is truly going to be enough. So even though your knees are bent, you are still getting a huge benefit to this. Your pelvis is relaxed and neutral. Your spine is starting to elongate. Your hips are in flexion. But crucially, what we're working on here is this dorsiflexion of the feet. Shin burn. We want shin burn. So just really focus, like the first few times that you do this, just focus on your feet. Like they have to be as flat as possible. The big toe mustn't be closer towards you than the fifth toe. We don't worry about what our knees are doing because our brain will want us to focus too much on our knees, and that's where we'll start compensating with the feet. So lock the feet in, the knees will start to change eventually. I'm going to have a break because I'm already tired. So once we feel like we understand the pelvis, the upper body and the foot thing, that's where we can start straightening the knees. But the danger of the knees is that when we push them backwards, lots of people are going to do this, where the knees push back and the feet relax off. And lots of people are going to push backwards into hyperextension, which is the body's way of compensating for a lack of hip function and a lack of foot function. This exercise is all about ankle function, foot function, and hip function. It's not about straightening your knees. So what is more important to me is that we lock on the right muscles and we don't get too distracted about like aligning the knees or straightening the knees. Yes, it would be really nice for us to have straight knees so that we're getting like more of a hamstring stretch and more of a calf stretch, but not at the expense of hyperextensive knees. So if you're doing this and you go from this and you really feel that like lovely burn along the shin, and then you straighten your knees and suddenly the feet don't feel like they're working very hard and you've lost that shin burn, you're probably compensating through your knees. So you've taken it too far. So bend your knees until you find the point where that shin burn is back. If you have any numbness in your feet as you do static wall, it's normally a sign that you're hyperextending with your knees as well, but it's also probably telling you there's a little bit of misalignment at the pelvis. So yes, eventually in an ideal world, our knees would be straight and our bum would be at the wall, but not if it means that we become inactive through the legs. So whatever you're doing, your focus is on shins burning first. Your brain understands it, your body understands it, great. And at the point where you understand that, we're going to squeeze our quads to pull the kneecaps towards the hip, not to push the kneecaps backwards, because lots of people will use the quads as their friend to help them hyperextend and compensate with the knee. So we squeeze the quads, we keep pulling the feet backwards. We understand now that the front of the shins feed into the quads and then that feeds into the hips. So we're establishing hip flexion here as well as dorsiflexion of the ankle. And if we're absolutely sure that we can straighten the legs a bit without losing our focus at the feet, without losing our focus through the ankles, without losing our focus through the shin burn, without buckling backwards, without lifting our pelvis, etc., that's where we can start to straighten our legs a little bit more. Breathing into this, I'm noticing that I'm trying to compensate with my toes, so I'm actually going to take a little bit of that straightness out of my knees so I can get more of a burn through my shins. So that was static wall. It's excellent for untwisting the legs, excellent for ankle mobility, excellent for hip strength, excellent for pelvic balance. And as we change all of these things further downstream, for lots of us, we're really going to notice that our lower back and our rib cage and our shoulders also elongate and balance themselves out as well. So we can create a whole bunch of upper body change by focusing on the function of our legs and feet. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again soon.